Upload. Hey guys, this is episode 9 of the UNTAMED Podcast, and today we're going to have a very, very special episode that I'm sure lots of y'all have been waiting for. We're going to be talking about carnivore pets. And if you're on Facebook, there is a group, Raw Carnivore for Dogs, I believe. And this man beside me is actually the creator of the group. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Brett Lee, the creator of the Canine Carnivore group on Facebook. So just helping people switch to raw in a simplified way.
That's super awesome. Okay, so I guess the easiest way to start about this, would you rather talk about your personal carnivore journey or start with your dog?
You know what? It's a good question actually because they both go into one another. So my own health journey was kind of alongside my pet dogs, and they kind of met each other.
Okay, why don't you just go in chronological order? That kind of sounds best to me.
Okay, so my own health journey sort of started when I was born, really. So I won't go back that far, obviously, but I suffered with chronic acid reflux from a baby. So I've dealt with that throughout my entire adult life. My parents, obviously, when I was younger. So that was one of the ailments that I struggled with. Tried every diet known to human beings on the planet: FODMAP, pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, and I feel I was quite lucky that they actually led me back to, because the healthiest I ever was, I think, if I can remember, as a young man, was when I was eating more meat. And those diets led me back to more meat, which was carnivore. So I found it, and it's literally about a year and a half ago. And I sort of tried it, living with a vegetarian. My wife's vegetarian, so it's quite with the health of the animals, and the welfare of animals and stuff. But my ailments very, very quickly disappeared. I mean, lifelong chronic acid reflux gone in 5 days by switching to carnivore.
That's
So
really good. 5 days. A lot of people, it takes a lot longer, so that's awesome.
yeah, 5 days, and it was literally gone. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it went from really chronic to still needed omeprazole, which is a proton pump inhibitor tablet that doctors issue you when you've got it, which is stops acid production, which is probably one of the worst things you can do for somebody with it, I know now. But it wasn't as bad as it has been, is what I'm trying to say, to be fair. So the 5 days was pretty good, but I had chronic back pain from chronic IBS, bloating, blah, 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 which was putting pressure on the spine. And that's I think that was about 2 to 3 weeks that was completely gone. And I've tried everything. When you've got those kind of pains and ailments, they're really consuming. But then obviously I've got my dogs, and I wanted the best diet for my dog, so I was spending loads of money on what I thought was the best store bought vet recommended foods for my dogs, and couldn't understand why I was having to visit the vets all the time. And it's led me to today thinking, well, I don't believe humans and dogs that part of their life should be going to the doctors and vets as part of their life. I think if something happens, like an accident, yeah, of course, you rush to the vets or doctors, and it's A&E, that kind of stuff. But I think when you're in your prime years, as anybody, whether it's a female or male, human or dog, you shouldn't be going to the vets all the time. So that's kind of what I've been in the back of my mind for quite a long time. So yeah, and then it led to looking at their bowl, thinking, why are they not thriving? Why is their poop disgusting and all over the place? Why is their coats dull? Why are they itching, getting ear infections, licking their feet all the time? All these things that were going on, and when I was spending all this money. So when I switched and found that it helped me that quickly and such a huge difference, I obviously looked at their bowl and thought, I wonder. And I'd heard loads about raw feeding. I'd actually worked with holistic vets without realizing that promote raw feeding. I didn't even know what it was at the time. So when I was working with dog behavioral with dogs, I worked with these people. So I reconnected with those people, and then started introducing raw to my dogs.
That's super great. So I don't know. I feel like you commented on this post. So my cat, can you? My rooster is back. Or no, it's my chicken. She's so
It's a
loud.
chicken.
I don't know what she's doing. But Anyways, my cat is got like HIV for cats, dogs, whatever, like AIDS. But
Yeah.
it's like present in his eyes. So
Yeah.
this was a really long time ago. I actually made a post about it. And a lot of people suggested me to start using raw kefir in his eyes, and I did that, and it's helped. But I also went to like a different vet, and while they're not like holistic root cause vets, they're definitely better about trying to figure out why this is happening versus just giving you a pill. So yes, he's got an autoimmune condition and it's presenting in his eyes. And we've
Right.
cleared up a lot with diet, but his eyes were so bad to the point where I either had to give him steroids or go through surgery. And the steroids, in combination with the diet, have done wonders for his eye. And now
Mhm.
it's trying to like get him off of the steroids because you know how bad that can be. But
Yeah.
I've definitely noticed his diet is what is going to keep it in control long term because he hasn't had a flare up at all.
Okay. But it's interesting you hit on the feline variety cats because we rescued a cat actually. I'd say probably about 3 years ago, coming up for 4 years. I think she was about 9, 10 when we first got her, so she must be about. She's got to be 14, around that kind of marker anyway. But she came to us and she was being fed kibble. You know what kibble is? High heated, toxic little lumps of whatever, which I've done posts on recently, actually, some tests on them. But she came to us on kibble, and she literally about 2 years ago, all her hair started falling out on her back, like quite bad, like Richie to bald. She lost a huge amount of weight almost overnight, to the point we thought we were going to lose her, and she started having seizures quite regularly. They were getting closer and closer together, quite bad ones. So it was right at the time when I was considering the raw food for the dogs and changing their food. It's when I found the canine, the carnivore diet for myself. So I started buying a higher quality store bought cooked tin stuff for her. And I saw a little bit of a change, but not much. So I just started giving her raw egg. So I gave her raw egg yolk with cream, the cat that got the cream. And then I saw a post through me researching and stuff from somebody else that's from Australia that said that their cats absolutely loved kangaroo mints. They just loved it raw. So I thought, well, I can go and buy beef mints. It can't be that far off. So we switched her straight overnight to that. Cast forward to now, and touch wood, she must be coming on for a year, seizure free. So we haven't seen or heard any form of it, and it was normally in the house around about the early evening time, about this time. We've not seen any, so she's been back out hunting. I mean, for the last 2 months, she hasn't come in at night, so she's out every night, all night hunting. That's snakes, voles, moles, whatever, and she'll catch pretty big stuff. She's only a small girl, but my point is, since switching her to raw meat, fat, organs, bones, she's absolutely thriving.
That's so awesome to hear. So I'm not feeding my cat raw because he's such a picky eater. Like, and I know I could like just force it, like starve him out. But my
Mm,
family, they love him too, and they'll be like, you can't abuse him like that. Whatever, I don't care. But he does get like really, really nice quality like wet food that doesn't have any starches or oils or anything.
yeah.
It's like basically buying canned tuna or canned chicken or canned beef.
Hmm.
And he does really well with that. But I think he's got like that Pavlov's
Have
dog.
us theory. Mm,
Yeah, to where like just opening the can, that's what makes him want to eat food. Because if I go grab, like I've bought like the frozen ground turkey, beef, chicken, poultry
yeah.
mix for him that's like frozen that you thaw out, and I've
Hmm.
tried to get it to him, and he'll just stare at me like, "What? That's not food, human." So
Yeah.
I've had to kind of work my way around it, but he does pretty good now. I would like to feed him raw, but he just won't like touch it, and then it just if he does, he drags it under our couch and leaves it there. So that's just it's gross. But he's doing really well just on basically carnivore for cats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any switch to meat is better than the alternative kibbles, store bought stuff, those kind of highly processed things. But what we have to realize is for animals, especially cats that are, dogs that are out carnivores, is that they will choose to eat wild stuff in the wild, and people say they're omnivores because they'll eat the stomach contents and stuff like that. No, I disagree. I mean, if you look at the largest the research that's been done on wolf poo in the wild, they collected over 30,000 samples of all different wolves across the globe, not just grey wolves, all the wolves, and they tested the poo for basically looking at, are they omnivores or are they carnivores, and it was over 95% out and out carnivore from their poop. So for me, it's just, and if you think about it, they're feast or famine in the wild. That's how they operate. They can go for a long periods of time without any food, any kills. So they will eat other earth grown foods to survive. So if we're cooking stuff I mean, when you cook, you alter the structure of any food, whether it's a vegetable or whether it's meat, it alters. So you've got things like glutamate that form. Glutamate is a carcinogen. So, people that eat a lot of barbecued meat with the char and stuff like that, it's very high in glutamate and other carcinogens from that cooking, not from the meat. So it's when you delve deeper and look at, we've always said that red meat causes cancer. Okay, what red meat? How is it cooked? So if you look at a lot of carnivore animals, they don't get cancer, and the reason being is because it's not cooked. They're eating it raw. So they're getting the nutrients, more nutrient bound foods because it's not heated. So even when we're going to the store and buying the high quality store bought stuff, it's still cooked. It's slowly cooked, so it's changed, and that's not how nature intended for them. So I think, going back to your cat, if you did switch and tried ground beef, and just try it, an 80 to 50 80 to 20 split protein to fat, and just try it, because our cat took a little while to go, what the hell is this? Now she won't eat anything else. You put kibble down for her, she'll laugh at you. She won't
But
even go anywhere near it.
yeah, he won't go anywhere near kibble. I guess maybe if I just like stick it in the little cans and like open it for him, maybe he'll eat it. Um,
Does he hunt? Does he go and hunt?
yes, he eats. Well, we've got a bunch of chickens. He's actually protects our chickens. He's a good little livestock guardian cat.
Oh,
But he'll
nice.
squirrels and birds, and I find moles,
Oh,
like dead moles, all the time everywhere. And if we ever have like a baby chick die, I'll give it to him. He'll eat it. So he does get a good amount of like raw meat, but he's he's doing pretty good. Yeah, and I understand with the glutamine and then the advanced glycation in products too, um,
mm,
in cooked meat. That's like a really big concern of mine, but a lot of people don't know about it, which is like crazy to me. So,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean, look, Dr. Ken Berry and other doctors, they'll say, you could switch to eating hot dog sausages, and it's still going to be healthier than a carb-rich, heavy sort of beige food diet of chips, pastas, potatoes, that kind of stuff. Of course it is, especially the highly processed stuff. So I mean, I say to people on the canine carnivore, if your dog's thriving and you're feeding poultry, pork, those kind of things, then continue. Lots of dogs come to me and the canine carnivore, their owners, because their dog's not thriving.
mhm,
They're buying the highest grade store bought tin food. One thing they don't realize with tins is that tins today are actually layered with plastic. So that food is got microplastics within it, letched all into the food, which we now know is immune disruptors. And if you're feeding that from a tin every single day, then the immune system of that creature is being affected and disjointed every single day. That's just from tins. That's without the heavy metals leaching into the food as well, and how long it's been stored in those tins, with heat, oxygen, and light, etc., that have a variation on it. So, but lots of dogs and some cats as well come to us because they're really struggling. You'll have a dog that's being raw fed, but it's got constant ear infections and no antibiotics will fix it, and they're really struggling. Where you remove poultry and switch it to raw ruminant specific meat, which is the cleanest meat you can have because of their multi-chambered stomachs, then you see the inflammation markers start to go down, the ear infection goes away. So, lots of cats and dogs will thrive on meat per se. Cooked, uncooked, they can. If a dog and a cat can survive on kibble till it's later in its years, they're pretty awesome creatures. That they can bounce back to most things, but not all of them, like humans. And that's why my journey is quite linked to my dogs, because I didn't thrive. Everyone was telling me eat more fiber, eat more vegetables. Well, the more I did, and the closer I got to vegan, the sicker I became. I was nearly passing out and having ambulances called to my house because we just didn't know what was going on. But here I was eating this so-called really healthy modern diet, but actually it was secretly killing me with inflammation. So, I look at dogs and dogs come to me. So I don't allow promoting of poultry or pork or fish on the site, because unless you get it like proper raised pasture, wild, antibiotic, hormone injection free, proper birds, proper pigs, which is very hard to get if you're an average person that just has to go to a store and get your food. It's near on impossible to get it without it having some level of toxicity in that meat. Whereas when you go to the ruminant creatures, they've got multi-chamber stomachs that removes most, if not all, the toxins from that food that they eat, so it doesn't leach into the animal.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I'm in a good position to where I have all of my own birds.
Yeah,
I can choose what they eat, and I still supplement their feed with like grains, but they're organic, non-GMO grains.
yeah.
But for the most part, they free range our property. They eat bugs, they eat grass, and I've never had a problem with any of them being sick. We get mites, but I treat them with
Yeah.
diatomaceous earth. They go away. I've never had any just chickens like randomly fall over and die. Like I figured
Mm.
out the less you do, the better your animals end up being.
Absolutely, and that if everybody could access poultry like how you're raising it, it'd be fantastic. I wouldn't not promote it on the site. However, we now know that when you look at a chicken, especially in the United States, if you look on the packaging and it says 10% water, that actually means in the cooling process of that bird, it was placed in chlorinated water. Chlorine, we now know, if you put your hand in a bowl of chlorine water for 5 minutes and remove your hand, the chlorine's in you, not in the water.
Mhm.
So that bird's been soaked in it. So there's one layer of toxicity that that we're feeding to our dogs that could be. I'm not saying it is. I'm not a vet or anything like that, but it could be what's giving a lot of dogs inflammation that
Yeah.
come to us, and then we switch and blah blah blah. But I think that's why I delve deeper. So it's not just about nutrition for dogs and raw feeding. For me, it's a huge part of it. Is simplifying the sea of noise of how do I feed raw and all these different ratios, pumpkin seeds, all this kind of stuff that dogs simply do not need.
Yeah.
It delves deeper into, if you're going to feed sardines from a tin to your dog, what journey has that fish been on since it left the ocean? That's the most important. And when you look into those, chicken, pork, how they're raised, how they're treated, and then what the meat journey goes on from when it's killed to when it comes to you, most people wouldn't go anywhere near it unless they can get it like how you raise your birds. Then that's different, because we know that eggs from chickens, if they've been given access to bugs, which they will eat. I mean, they'll eat mice and stuff like that. Chickens, if you give them meat, they'll eat it, as you probably well know. But if you look at the density of the nutrients in those yolks compared to even organic grain-fed, so-called free-range chickens from a store, there's a lot more nutrients in this one than this one.
Yeah. Yeah, and even if like my chickens, they get food scraps all the time. Like
Yeah,
any extra ground beef that went bad, they get
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Like if I had a steak that went bad, I'll give it to them. Like anything like that. And what I've noticed that makes them lay eggs better, is like
yeah.
shellfish casings and
Mm.
fermented dairy. Any of
Yeah.
that will up their egg production up here. So I think, it's crazy that all animals, even omnivores, basically thrive on a higher meat diet. And if I do horses as well, so I don't know if you know that much, but
Yeah.
that's one of my big hobbies, what I do for work. And a lot of these horses, if they're starving, they're opportunistic carnivores. They'll eat a rat, they'll eat a mouse, they'll eat
Mm,
a bug. um and this is not like their natural diet, of course, but
yeah.
better than not eating, and they can still digest that even though their stomach acid is so different from ours.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. And the thing that really opened my eyes to go into how you can break certain foods down and certain foods can't be is that there's a carnivore influencer. I can't remember his name. I'd have to look it up separately, but he has a colostomy bag. So and his food obviously gets to the colon, but in the bag, so he can literally see what's broken down and what isn't. And long story short, he's tried all the different earth-grown foods, in particularly mushrooms. He talks about, and they're literally intact in the bag, so that hasn't been broken down. Whereas when he has any form of animal food, meat, fat, organs, whatever, it's complete liquid in his bag, which is a bit gross to talk about, but it just gives you literally a window into, and you wouldn't think that from what you're told growing up about, oh, meat sits in your guts and your colon for years on end and all this kind of stuff. It's absolute rubbish.
Yeah, and if you even look at like ruminant animals that eat grass and eat hay all day, they're eating these long strains of fiber that get fermented in their gut, which then turns into crude fat, I believe, and then that gets converted into ketones. So they're all ketogenic, like they're all in
I
ketosis.
didn't know that.
You haven't heard of that?
No, I didn't know that. No, we've
Uh,
got we've got horses here as well, so that I'm interested in that.
yeah. So this is mainly what I saw on cows, and it's probably the same with horses as well. But
Mm.
they're running off of ketones. They're not running off of. I mean, the ketones get converted into glucose, but they're not running off of it goes through your stomach and then automatically converts to glucose. It goes through a process like if we were to eat meat, it goes through gluconeogenesis. So, and also with these animals that eat so much fiber, they poop so many times a day. Horses poop like 5 to 6 times a day, depending on how much they eat. Some horses eat more than others, but
Yeah.
what they're pooping out is just the fiber. They don't digest the fiber. We can't digest fiber.
Nope.
Nobody can digest the fiber, so that's what gets pooped out. So then you'll see a lot of people who come to carnivore and they won't poop. They'll go a week or 2 weeks and they'll be like, "What's going on?" And then they're
That's
not
because
in
the body's going, yes,
yeah,
saturated fat at last, and just to bring
yeah,
taking it all in.
yeah, but they're not in pain, but then they're concerned. They're like, "Why am I not pooping?" And it's just
Yeah.
like crazy to me that people don't automatically know this. And I think a lot of it is just people now are so disconnected from like nature and their own bodily autonomy, and how just the natural processes work that people don't think. They don't think, oh, since it's this way for cows and it's this way for lions and it's this way for cats, we're animals too.
Mhm.
We're above them, but we're not different from them.
Mhm.
um you know if you
Yeah.
yeah, if you understood what I meant. I don't know how another way to explain it.
No, I get it. I get what you're saying, and humans. I think we can't stop really interfering. And I think a lot of the issues that come with keeping horses, having dogs, is that we take away what's natural. We've done it to ourselves. We live in warm boxes. We've taken ourselves, removed ourselves from the earth. Grounding and earthing is a huge part of how we should be living, laying on skins on the ground, not on beds on wooden floors and stuff. We're wearing shade, so our eyes aren't getting the right sun rays into our body, so everyone's burning and getting skin cancers. Remove sunglasses, your eyes need what comes from the sun. That you can actually stare at the sun first thing in the morning, for a minute to 2 minutes at a time. first thing in the morning when it's coming up, and that will give you what you need for hours of the day. You know, cold exposure, all those things, and we do the same to animals. So not only are we disengaging from the earth, we're making our dogs do it. So dogs are in flats, houses, 8, 12 hours a day while we're out at work. They're not on the ground where they should be. You know, so there's lots of different things, but you know, try not to digress. But there's lots of different things that point towards when horses start getting laminitis and becoming lame. You know, we put them in a little postage stamp with just grass. Well, they can't, you know, they're foragers. They can't go and select certain things. You know, if they've got stomach trouble, they can't go and select nettles. You know, which you probably know they'll do. You know, so we do these things where we take away what's natural for ourselves and our animals. And going back to dogs, I think a lot of it all has a knock-on effect with dogs, like it does humans, and that's why vet visits go up. And suddenly, a vet's an ongoing part of a young dog's life, and it shouldn't be. And when you do make these shifts, and lots of people come to me and I guide them for, you know, it's all free. The canine carnivore is all free. I do it all in my spare time. So, but I'm guiding people around the world, you know, Australia, Canada, America, all over Europe. There's just so many people now, South Africa, that are just they've made the transition to either considering carnivore or going part, you know, ketovore or whatever the version that works for them. And then they've got their dogs out there, and they're suddenly going, bloody hell, he's right. We're feeding our dogs McDonald's, which is kibble. You know, we're feeding, and we know it's not right. We've gone to carnivore. Now we want to do it for here. So, and some people start looking at the sea of noise on Facebook, which is raw feeding sites. And of course, they're huge. So there's so many people on there telling people what to do, not to do, and it's really stressful. You spend 5, 10 minutes on a raw feeding site looking through the post. It is literally, it makes your head hurt at how much they're saying that you need this protein, they need that protein. You've got to switch through all these different proteins, otherwise the dog's not going to thrive. It's absolute rubbish. You know, we get every single nutrient we need to survive and thrive from beef only. We could just eat fatty meat every day and we'd thrive. Dogs are exactly the same, but for them it's raw.
Yeah, and you know, I think even with humans, and a lot of people don't go this far because, like, just humanity in general is so out of touch with our natural biology, but humans don't need to cook their meat either. And a lot of people get really grossed out when I say that, but I'm like, it's so true. And while it's not something that I practice, it doesn't make it any less true. Um, yeah, and that's always something I've been super interested in, is just like going fully raw. And obviously with my situation that wouldn't be ideal, but you know, it's better for your body. And hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like again with like all animals, like we keep horses in stalls, and you know,
Yep.
like a horse that's got a bad gut microbiome, if you keep them in pasture with other horses, they'll eat the other horse's poop, do like a their own microbiome
Go
transplant.
and
Yeah.
cleanse. Yeah. Yeah.
And then even with horses, if you look at so in America we have HMAs, which is like Mustangs organizations.
Yep.
And all these horses that live on HMAs, they're very fat. Like they're not scrawny, but they're not obese. They're not gonna get laminitis. They're not gonna founder, nothing. But they don't live in grassy fields. They live in
Mm.
almost desert lands where there are these very dried out grasses and plants.
Mm.
And there's a disease in horses called PSSM, and it's a sugar disease. But you would think,
Right.
oh, this means horses can't eat the corn, they can't eat oats, they can't eat horse feed, they can't eat grass.
Yeah.
Grass itself is super sugary. So we've also taken horses out of their natural environments, and that's why we're having so many
Yeah.
issues with horses. And I know cows are different because of their four-chambered stomach, but cows thrive better on grass than they do
Yep.
grass grassy like dried grass.
Mm.
But we think about with any animal that we've domesticated, why are they domesticated? Because we change the way they feed, we change their habits, we change
That's
the way
why people
they live.
call dogs omnivores, and it
Yeah.
just you know, it just makes me laugh because they're not omnivores. We have turned them into a creature that's adapted to earth-grown foods on a regular basis. That's not an omnivore. That's a human created thing. But you can also bring them back to carnivore gently if you do it the right way, because you have to build the enzymes in the gut that deal with the bacterias and the processing of certain raw meats. So you don't go get switching a dog from kibble straight to chicken overnight, because it's got a very high bacteria level, that, as we know. So if you start with the soft meats, and do it gradually, you can build those enzymes, but make the stomach and the digestive system prepared for that type of food. And then just add in raw dairy. Probiotics aren't needed. You just add in a bit of raw dairy if it's tolerated, like with humans, because it's got every single nutrient and bacteria and biome that's needed to thrive. So
I agree. My cat, he loves raw milk. He loves raw butter. Like if he'll like sit there and beg me for a slice of butter. He's so weird. But he really does. Your camera's off.
sorry about that.
He really does do so much better now that he's more as carnivore as he is right now. So he's like, I don't know what he eats outside. I don't know, but I mean, I'm assuming he's 100% carnivore because he probably is only eating like bugs and birds.
Yeah.
But he has so much energy now. He'll play all day. His eyes, his both of his eyes were fully like scar tissued over. Like it was so bad.
Wow. Yeah.
And now, like even though they're not 100% clear, it's like 80% clear. And the vet didn't think we could get it more than 60%. So it's just like amazing
Nice.
what you can do. And I made him fast a lot, which I know a lot of people find is cruel, but it's not like he's going without food, but he can go outside and he can eat a squirrel if he wants to. And
Mm.
I've noticed with that, like his eye inflammation will go down.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not fasting him for a long period of time, and he's not by no means underweight. He's not overweight. He's actually maybe just a little bit overweight, but he's like right under 10 pounds, so he's not a very large cat. And he does great. He thrives, and he lives a cat life. And out of all the cats I've ever had in my life or that I've seen, he's by far the most healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you did want to try the mince thing, you can try it. But I mean, if I say to everybody, if your pet's thriving, whether it's a cat, dog, they really are thriving and they're having the best life, not having to go to the vets every 2 minutes, that kind of stuff, and you can physically see their energy, their coat, their eyes, their teeth. There's some really good markers there with eyes, teeth, and I always talk a lot about poo. You can see a lot about what the dog's eating and how they're handling it just by keeping an eye on what comes out the other end. And when my dogs were on earth-grown stuff, carbs and vegetables, that kind of stuff, well, hell no, it was horrible. Now their poops are completely different. In fact, if I don't get to pick them up quick enough on our lands, they go white. So it's the right protein and fat levels for the dog. So what's coming out the other end is what's not required from the body. And in actual fact, what people find when they switch to this way of eating, which is the raw ruminant specific diet, is that their dog needs a lot less food intake on a daily basis. Quite similar to us. So I've got a nearly 30 kilogram Belgian Malinois called Brax, and he has 600 grams of ground beef a day. That's it, and he's absolutely thriving. His coat's shiny, his teeth are pure white. He'll have a raw bone, probably once a fortnight. I give them organ meat once a week, if that, because they don't need it. And he'll have a raw egg, proper pasture hen egg once a day, just one a day. And some raw dairy as well in between. But yeah, I mean they're all thriving. I mean our 9-year-old terrier, the vet said that she can't believe that she's 9 years old. She just cannot believe it.
That's awesome. Yeah, my cat, he'll just like take eggs out of our like egg cartons that I have sitting near our front door where I go collect eggs, and he'll just take one and carry it off somewhere and eat it. Um but he won't, if I crack open like a store-bought egg and give him the yolk to it, he won't touch it. He will not touch
uh,
it. So I've definitely noticed that the closer the food is to being like real food, the more likely he is to eat it. But
Yeah.
my birds are not eating birds, so I'm not gonna go kill them. But if I could find something that he really enjoyed that was easy to switch over to, I would. And I've been trying different stuff, and so far he'll do raw dairy. He loves cheese, raw cheese and butter, and I can get him to do raw steaks. He won't eat the ground beef. I've tried that many times. Anything ground he won't eat.
Ah, strange. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's always been very picky like that. So
Sure.
um
Yes, it's. I mean, you know your animals, and everybody does. And like I say, if they're thriving, just don't change it. If even some people just they won't come away from chicken. Although I don't have it promoted on the group, if your dog's thriving eating it, then continue. If it's really working. But what I'm about is people that are being recommended kibbles, and basically the stuff that vets promote and make a lot of money from. That's what I want to educate people on, and how bad that food is. The rancid, bleached, high heated seed and vegetable oils that go into that food, how long that product is heated for. Because it was created to stay on shelves for long periods of time to save on wastage. So, vets will say this is high quality, go on Science, go on Hills, go on Royal Canin. It's all garbage. I tested it recently, like people at humans have been doing with all the different burgers from, I don't know, McDonald's, Burger King, and a few others, basically. And they leave it in the wrapper, in the bag, the brown bag, for 30 days, and then they open it and show you what it's like. Well, I did the same with kibble. So I've got a kibble container under the counter in my kitchen. It's coming on for 2 years old now. It was a brand new bag of Royal Canin. I put it into the container, and it's when I switched the dogs over to full carnivore. It's been in there since. It smells, looks exactly the same. So bacteria hasn't even gone anywhere near it. So it's not food. Like the McDonald's meal, it can stay as it is. The burger will look exactly the same as it was when it was first purchased. That's exactly the same with kibble. So I put it outside. So here we have lizards, carpenter ants, which are carnivores, birds, which are carnivores as well, and we've also got our cat. So I put raw mince out, so little pellets of raw mince, which is an 80-20 ratio protein to fat, and I put kibble out the same amount as well. The kibble was left untouched all day, but all the raw meat was gone. So no creature is touching that, what vets call, high quality thing for our dogs. And we're wondering why 2 out of 3 dogs now contracts and dies of cancer.
yeah. And that's just like awful to me because people, they love their pets and they want the best for them, but they don't question anything. They don't
No, but
question the food, they don't question the vet, they don't question any of this. And then
yeah,
they're sad that their dog died. And then you like look at them and say, "Well, you probably could have done a little better." And they think you're insane. And I'm not going to go up to somebody who just lost their dog and said that, but you know, like you can't tell people that now. You can't go up to somebody and say, "Hey, your dog is a wild animal even though it's domesticated. It shouldn't be eating hydrolyzed corn protein."
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I did a deep dive into the packaging of that particular kibble bag, and looked at the. I mean, the marketing they use is really clever. So they use like award shaped things, like medals, and are they called florets? What's it when you win one of those almost flowery shaped things? Rosette. So they put those kind of things and it's subliminal messages, backed by science, backed by vets, yeah, in-house vets and in-house scientists that only have to prove certain things. So, does it have that layer of fat? Yes, it does. Oh, that's really good. But what they don't do is tell you exactly what that process has gone through. So, and as I say, for bacteria to not even go anywhere near it for nearly 2 years, that's not food. If you're going to call it food, apart from honey, every single food item, whether it's earth grown or not, will break down with bacteria. So if that's not, and McDonald's isn't, and the things that are making dogs and humans sick, then we know it's not food, not real food. So that's my mission, is to try and educate people so that they and and that's why I've started in my post recently, starting to put a white coat on, because I get a lot of pushback on some of the sites of people. They want to basically question me and back me into a corner and have a fight with me, really. And they'll ask where my veterinary certification is, those kind of things, and call me a random spouting nonsense on Facebook. But actually, if you look at how long I've been focusing on nutrition for myself and for dogs, I've got a lot more nutritional training than most vets, if not nearly all of them.
Hmm.
So, and that's what I try and do. So, but there's lots of people out there, like you say, that want to do better for their dogs. They just don't know where to turn. And of course, if you look at anything health related for yourself, so if you wanted, I don't know, healthier eyes, you wanted better skin, you wanted to feel better, I don't know, whatever it is, there's going to be a sea of noise that's going to contradict and cross over and tell you this, tell you that. I mean, one example the other day was, I like coffee, so I drink coffee. In the space of 24 hours, I saw one post told me it was gonna make me acidic and I was going to get cancer and die from coffee. And then within the same 24 hours, I saw another one saying coffee's so good, it's going to help your brain function, your this, your that, and blah blah. So it's so hard for certain people to try and sit and try and break through it and fathom what is right and what is wrong. But what I prefer to lean into is what I call case studies, and that is actual living beings. So my dogs, all thriving, not going to the vets, healthy as anything. Their teeth are brilliant white right to the back. Their coats are shiny. They're fantastic weight once you get the weight balance right. But it's a journey. You start with carnivore. You have to go on a bit of a journey to find where your groove is, kind of thing, for humans and for dogs. Once you get that, they absolutely thrive. No more biting feet and the yeast infections, ear infections, skin troubles. It all just melts away. And I've seen it now with hundreds of dogs. So hence the reason why I continue doing what I'm doing and helping. So and the site is growing. I mean, we're nearly up to 700 members now in the group, and that's happened in under 11 months.
That's awesome. Yeah, so how I actually came across your group was I had posted my cat in a raw feeding group, and I don't think it was your group. And people were like saying, "Oh, you need to give him sweet potato, and you need to do like 30% seafood, 5% organ meats, like all the crazy stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, you really think I'm gonna sit here and measure out all of this, go into a food app and do all this just for my cat? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I love him, but I'm putting more effort into feeding him than I do myself. I'm not gonna do that. That's crazy." And I
yeah,
got backlash for saying that. Like, what kind of insane psycho really sits there and measures out to the gram, to the percentage, how much they're feeding their dog? Like, it's not like your dog is going out in the wild thinking, "Oh, I need to eat 30% shellfish," so they go into
exactly.
the pond and eat exactly 30%. Like, no, a dog doesn't do that. So,
No,
like, crazy. So then I was like, okay, maybe I'll just post it in like a regular carnivore people group. And then I had so many people in the comments giving me like great advice, but a lot of them actually recommended me to your group. So that's when I
oh, well,
so if people aren't having success in raw groups and they're already carnivore, maybe they just post in a regular carnivore group, because that was the most helpful, at least showing me to your group, and I got a lot of grateful tips.
yeah.
I did have a lot of people in the comments of your group saying like the complete opposite of what your group is even about. I'm like, why are you even in here? But you know,
Yeah, you do get that, and that's part of policing your group without being too militant. But I've got a moderator who's brilliant now, helping me with it as it's growing. But you're always going to get that, and I think people. Some people come in and start selling their own thing to try and take people out without introducing themselves to the group owners. So I think that's down to etiquette. And if I go into a group like you saw me in a carnivore human group, that's because I've asked the owner and the administrators of that group if they don't mind. This is what I do. This is what I love and what I'm passionate about, and this is what I'm trying to solve and help. Would you mind if I post in your group time to time? Not everyone's said yes, but the ones that have, they're the reason why I'm helping the amount of dogs that I'm helping and people with dogs today. I couldn't have done it without them. So I don't know if I should shout out their actual name on this podcast. I'll probably hold off doing that until I get permission. But there's been some fantastic carnivore people, and those are my people. As soon as I go off into just a raw feeding site and start saying the same stuff that I do in my group and what's welcome with carnivores, I get so much kickback and pushback, and people can be really spiteful and a bit, and it's not what I'm about. But as soon as I'm within the carnivore humans, let's just say, I don't know, 30% of them have got a dog or a cat. Those people are absolutely lovely because, like you just said, they're going to these sites for advice, and then they're getting these people giving them basically another job to do. You don't need that. It's not necessary. Dogs, wolves, dogs, cats in the wild, they thrive. They'll go and kill what's in front of them, to be fair. And it's going to be healthy meat because it hasn't been tampered with. We need to try and replicate that as much as we can. And for me personally, my vibe is the cleanest meats is ruminant, unless you can find somebody like you that raises birds in the right way. So, and I've spoken to people that can source that, and I go, have at it, go for it. I wish I could, I can't. But yeah, and just give them and point them and simplify. So all I've done is help people come away from kibble and simplify raw feeding, because it doesn't have to be complicated. You can just dogs can thrive, so can cats, on ground or minced beef alone. That's how simple it is.
Yeah, so I guess this is kind of time for me to talk about this. So I was trying to do a 90-day lion diet experiment, but you know what lion diet is, right?
Yep.
So I do great for about a week or two, and then I think I get to almost 50 days, but for some reason I start craving egg yolks and seafood. And I'm not a very big egg eater, and I've never been a seafood person. So, I know dogs are a bit different, but I just wonder, if we were to source these things good, would it be more better for the dogs? Because I was like, my cravings for these foods were to the point of it was stressing me out so much, like that I was
Yeah.
craving these things. Because, when you're not the type of person to crave eggs or, crave seafood, and actually both of those things, actually, I don't like those foods at all. Like, they're not something that I would eat. And the fact that I was craving it, it made me look deeper into it. And I wasn't the only person who'd experienced this. So, I completely agree with you that ruminants are the cleanest meat. But, like, my thing is, well, even if I was craving this stuff, what about, like, our animals? Like, because obviously they can't say,
Yeah.
hey, this isn't
Mm.
perfect for me. So, like, how would you know the difference between a dog that is truly thriving on just ruminants and a dog that may need some egg yolks and may need some, you know,
Mm.
oysters or whatever?
It's a really good question, and I don't promote just telling everybody you must only feed beef. So let me just make that clear. In actual fact, I promote raw dairy and eggs if tolerated, which is a big thing if tolerated. So
Yeah.
for me, when I switched to carnivore, I couldn't tolerate eggs, not one bit. They would make me very, very not good. So it took, and I persisted with it. So I tried monthly, couldn't have them, couldn't have them, couldn't have them. Tried at 3 months, got to 6 months in. Suddenly, I was able to eat an egg and just be a little bit kind of not it's like when food sits here a little bit. So it felt a little bit like that, but it was better. So a month later, I tried again, and I was able to eat eggs, and I found out it was cooking them in butter. I can eat butter. I can't eat cooked butter. So I can't cook with butter. I can only eat it raw. So I switched to beef tallow. Now I can eat eggs, and I had about half a dozen eggs with my dinner earlier. So if tolerated, it's quite a big thing. But raw milk versus pasteurized milk. Pasteurized dead milk. There's no quality in it at all, and that's the heating process of that product is what causes problems for people and dogs. So when people say I can't have milk because I'm lactose intolerant, whatever the reason is, I'm intolerant to it. When they switch to raw dairy, that can change, and they can actually start tolerating it. So yeah, I promote raw dairy, eggs, meat, for dogs. And I think you are right. They can't tell you. I can only see when a dog's not thriving to when it starts to thrive. And with this, I've seen dogs with chicken, they're not thriving. You know, they've got ear infections permanently and have had since they were young. They've had multiple antibiotics, steroids, hasn't helped. Remove poultry, goes away. So I'm not saying that's the case for every dog, but you look at certain diets for certain dogs, and in general, I'm here to help the ones that aren't thriving and are struggling. And people and the human handler owners don't know why. So, but then you look at kibble. You know, some dogs can be on kibble for years and years and years and be absolutely fine on it. Are they saying to their owner, "I need more each day"? You just don't know with dogs, and that's sometimes a downside because we don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah, and I feel like with dogs, their tails are kind of obvious. Like, they can be, they can't
Yep.
be. Some dogs are kind of like, you'll notice if you're a good pet owner, livestock owner, whatever kind of animals you have, you'll notice when there's something wrong. You'll
Yep.
notice when something's not right. So if you're not noticing these things, then like, what are you doing wrong? You know what I'm saying?
Uh,
Yeah. So, that just, it all goes back to being a good owner. Like feeding your dog raw food. That's being or at least trying. Some people may not know that poultry is bad for dogs, and they're like, okay, why is my
mm,
dog got worse doing carnivore?
yeah.
Uh, but at least their mind's already open to trying things, and
Yeah.
that's what I feel like I've noticed even with people, whatever, is the biggest difference. If their mind is not open to any of this, they're never going to be willing to try it. But if their mind is at least a sliver, like it's like a seed and it keeps on growing until they finally get to the point where they go all in, or their dog is eating all raw beef and lamb and raw egg yolks and whatever. And that's really awesome. And not everybody's going to go that far, but a lot of people do. And it all starts somewhere. So I really do think it's important for people to really care about their animals, because
Yeah.
people who don't, they're never gonna want to do this. So yeah, I really don't know
Exactly
where I'm
right.
at, but
Yeah, and if you are trying to do the right thing with your dog and it's not going right, and other people are telling you to add this, add that, you know, green lip mussel, pumpkin seeds, pumpkin, all these different things, add this, add that. Do the opposite. You know, try adding nothing. Remove it. It's not required. So for your dogs, you're trying the raw thing with all these different things in there, earth foods, and it's not working. Your dog's still not thriving, or maybe even getting worse. Take those away and look at the cleanest meats that you can get, which for me is going to a butcher and saying, I want this beef and fat ratio in this form for my dogs. And you can do it on a budget as well. And a good butcher, if you get, especially if you get your own meat there, if you can't get your own meat and you grow and raise your own meat, and you rely on butchers or stores, go to a butcher and get your meat in there, and then say, right, this is what I want for my dogs. Get them to put nothing in, no salt, no herbs, no nothing, no pumpkin seeds. Absolutely strip it out. Do that for 90 days and see how your dog responds to it. And you know, most I'd say 9 out of 10, probably even more than that on a weekly and monthly basis, start to thrive very quickly.
yeah, and a lot of people will say, "Oh, this is so expensive for a dog." But I know people who have like 130, 120-pound giant dogs, and it's more expensive to feed the dog than it is to feed their kid.
Yeah,
So,
but I mean, look, you know,
not,
if you're going to get those kind of dogs, you know
yeah,
they're going to eat a lot of food. You know, so if you're feeding kibble, and you're going to cross check the cost of kibble to raw, of course it's going to be out of whack depending on how you do it. But you should have bought the dog with the best food in mind, knowing that that's what it's going to cost, not bags of McDonald's, because that's what you're feeding them.
yeah, I
And
agree with that. And even like their dog does eat raw or very close to it, I believe. So it's pretty pricey, but they have a lot of money. It's not something they're concerned about. And their dog thrives. I mean, he's great. He's like, he's giant. He's like taller than me standing up. Uh, he's huge and he's the sweetest little dog. But then I see people who have like large breeds of dogs and their dog has alopecia, or like their eyes will like sag, like their eyelids will sag, and you've got these dogs
Mm,
that are very nicely bred dogs that these people are spending thousands of dollars on, but their dog looks like it's a manged coyote. You know,
Yeah.
it's not right. And I've always thought it's got to be something else. And now that I'm carnivore and I know all this stuff, I've realized that these people buy dogs and the breeders feed the dogs kibble. And then
Yeah.
they're telling their clients to feed kibble. And I've had an interaction with the breeder where they were mad at their clients because the client switched the dog to raw food and the dog, they didn't do it properly. They just, switched. And the dog was getting really sick and like having diarrhea. And they were like, okay, why is the dog so sick?
Yeah.
And blamed it on the breeder, and the breeder was mad. But honestly, as a breeder, you should be feeding your dog, the top quality. You shouldn't be just feeding them stuff you get
Yeah.
from the supermarket. And I've had a lot of disagreements with people on that, but it's their dogs, it's their choice. But
Exactly right. And that's the way I look at it. I'm not here to tell everybody that this is the one way or the highway, because it isn't. This is about, are we thriving? I wasn't thriving, and I was eating lots of earth food. I
mhm.
wasn't thriving. It was the opposite. It was doing the exact opposite. I'm now thriving. Lifelong chronic suffering issues gone, completely gone. That's happened, well, in the last year and a half, coming up to 2 years for me. And naturally, since I've put the dogs on it, they are. And every dog that's come to me, once they get through the period of the oxalate dumping and everything the body goes through, if there's parasites there, heavy metals, all these things that the body goes through and shifts and changes, um, once that's done, they're absolutely thriving. So, like anything, some people give up too soon. And I always say to them, you're on the right track, just push through. There's diarrhea, there's things that happen, and it's not very pleasant. But once you get through that and you find that kind of that plateau and that groove afterwards, even with dogs, you can fit, like you said earlier, you can physically see it. You don't need to second guess it. I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So, I guess we're getting close to an end. Is there anything else you really want to talk about before?
Sorry, you can probably hear my child in the background. Is crying at the moment. Sorry about that.
Oh,
No, I think it's covered it. I mean, I just wanted to sort of say, where my journey's come from, what's led me to this, and who I'm trying to help. And yeah, and it's working. There's a lot of people. I didn't realise. I just started it really as a hobby. And it was for my own dogs and my own health and my own dog's health. But actually, it's completely, to have nearly 700 members of the group in such a short space of time, just it's humbling and yeah, it's overwhelming sometimes, but it's lovely.
yeah. I'm glad more people are learning about this diet, and I mean, even if they're not full carnivore, just having that, seed planted in your mind where you're starting to question things is like awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no matter what diet you're on, people, if you're not thriving, and especially if you're not getting saturated fats and stuff like that, our brain's over 60% saturated fat, I found out since being on this diet. So it just goes into keeping with me that surely we need to feed ourselves that fuel, because
Mhm.
that's what we are.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree. Well, I guess
Mm.
we should end this on a good note. I want to thank you so much for coming and doing this. This was awesome. And everybody, the group will be linked below in the footnotes. And bye, guys.